Hello everyone, it's Tuesday again. It's November 22nd, 2011, and it's Harp Tuesday. In fact, this is a year of Harp Tuesdays now because on November 30th, 2010, I recorded my very first episode. So I'm excited. This is a bit of a celebration episode, and I'm going to be talking this week about performing and performance anxiety and being at your best while performing. But before I get to that, I wanted to share some news with you. The first is that many years ago, I guess about 10 years ago, my brother and I recorded an album of Christmas music on the rather unlikely combination of harp and marimba, which actually is a wonderful combination. And we're actually going to release that for digital download. 7 of the songs on that album for digital download, and that should be up. I should include a link to that on this video. So it's 7 of our own arrangements. As you can imagine, there's not a lot written for harp and marimba, including Medley of the Bells, which is my own composition, which takes a number of traditional Christmas carols and sort of interweaves them throughout most of the piece. You hear Carol of the Bells and then other carols coming in there as well. So it's some neat instrumental holiday music, and I certainly encourage you to check that out. And to celebrate that and to celebrate a year of Harp Tuesdays, I'm almost at 150 subscribers on YouTube, so when I reach 150, I'm going to give away a copy of that album to that 150th person, and also to a random subscriber who has already been subscribed. So tell your friends, and obviously you can watch without subscribing, but it's just an easy way to be updated when the next video is uploaded. And what other news? Oh, Skype lessons. So if you're interested in having a Skype lesson, I'm charging $10 for the first lesson. So that gives you a good chance to see whether that works for you, and whether it's wanting some help with very basic stuff or just a second set of ears to listen to a piece. I'd love to see if I can help you. So give me an email if you're interested. So let's get on to today's topic, which is performing. And it's actually interesting. I'm a part of this online virtual Harp Center mailing list, and somebody just posted about nerves, and I thought, how appropriate. So I have this little cheat sheet of stuff that I'm going to be talking about, and I start with goals. And what I mean by that is, let me paint a picture of a couple sort of states, hopefully, that you can look at to try to achieve in terms of where you are and how comfortable you are performing. So sort of the ideal goal is to really enjoy performing, to enjoy, regardless of actually playing music, to enjoy that feeling of being on stage performing for people, and to relish that. So that, sure, there's some nervous energy, perhaps, but that you really just love being on stage and performing. So that's I think a worthy goal. That's something that is definitely a goal to strive for. And then perhaps something less lofty than that is simply the goal of feeling comfortable enough performing that nerves don't adversely affect you, so that you're able to perform at the same level that you play when you're practicing by yourself, right? Because there's nothing more frustrating than playing a piece and knowing that you're making a bunch of mistakes that you don't normally do, perhaps because of nerves. So that sort of intermediary goal is one of not having nerves interfere with your ability to perform. So the second point on my little list is everyone gets nervous. And this is, now, obviously not everyone does. There are very few people who maybe I've always felt comfortable performing and always feel comfortable. But for the vast majority of us, everyone gets nervous. And of course, there's stories of famous classical musicians who throw up before performances, even after having performed many, many, many years. So don't think that it's just you. If you get nervous, you're not alone. You have a lot of company. So everyone gets nervous. So it's not some flaw, and it's a personal flaw. It's something that happens to everybody. Experience. New is scary. So I think this is a really, really important thing, that when you go to perform, it's not just the performance, it's that it's a new experience. And oftentimes when we're thrown in a completely new setting, it's a little freaky, right? It's a little scary. And so a lot of that anxiety that you may feel when you start performing, when you haven't done a lot of performing, has to do with the unfamiliarity of performing. And for me at this point, I'm very comfortable performing. I love performing. I don't really get nervous that much. But I remember when I first started performing, and one of the first public playing that I did was just busking outside a liquor store. And I remember driving down, or being driven down, and this was with a little Celtic harp a couple of years after I started playing, and just thinking, let's just turn back. This is, really being very scared, being very nervous. And yet, that's obviously, it's not a very pressure-filled situation, but just in large part, it's a totally new thing. So that's going to create fear and nervousness, regardless of the actual performance part. Fortunately, there's a great way to combat that, and that is lots of performances. And I have a little bullet point beneath that talking about low stress and supportive venues. So in many ways, the key to getting better at performing, there's no huge secret, it's just do more of it. And the more you do, the more comfortable you become. So it's essential to perform as much as you can. But it's also good to try to make sure that those performances are, say here, low stress / supportive. And what I mean by that is, imagine, say, a graduating recital. In a setting like that, you're being graded. There are people out there judging you. You have a very educated audience out there. You have your peers who hopefully are supportive, but you don't want to. That they're also listening to you in a critical way. So it's actually, a setting like that is somewhat different than a typical setting, and that's what I would call a high stress setting. So a competition or something like that, where there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of perhaps critical listening. Contrast that to playing outside a liquor store, busking, or playing in your local harp circle or something like that, where it's very supportive. There's not a lot of pressure. People are just there to listen and enjoy. And I know for me, some of the very first performances I did were at nursing and retirement homes. And I would go and I would do a concert. So I'm up there doing a solo concert, but it was a wonderful venue to do a bunch of performances because everyone was, of course, really supportive. I was young. They didn't really matter how I played. They were really gonna love it, right? And that type of atmosphere is a great place because you're dealing with just being comfortable performing, and you don't have to worry too much about the quality of the music that you're creating. That you don't have to be perfect, right? You're going to play some music, people are going to enjoy it, and you're going to get a chance to experience how it feels to be up there performing in this supportive and low stress environment. Okay, so now let's move on to mindset, some things to think about. And what I mean by this is performing, of course, it gets in our mind, right? That's often the cause of problems, is how we think about performing and how it feels to us. So here's some things to think about. And the first and perhaps most important is accepting that you may make a fool of yourself. So I think this is hard. This can be very hard, and it's very essential that as a performer, you will sometimes make a fool of yourself. You will sometimes make a lot of mistakes. You'll screw up, you'll do something foolish, but that's just part and parcel of being a performer. So if you can accept that, if you can say, yes, sometime, at some point, I'm going to have a memory lapse, or something's going to go really wrong. But that's just the way it goes. And, maybe nothing terrible happens ever to you, but it's just, you have to be comfortable being a fool on stage. So I think that's very important. And how you do that, I don't know, but just think about that. So then, voices in our heads is my next little bullet point. And by this I mean, of course, we sometimes have some little dialogue running through our head. Oh, I just made that mistake. I'm a terrible person, or whatever it is. You might have something that adds to that anxiety as you're up there playing in front of people. So all I can suggest in that is just to try to think about what those voices in your head are saying and see if what they're saying is helpful. Probably not. And try and figure out how to get them to go away. This next is a great quote, I believe, by Pablo Casals, which is, music is what happens between mistakes. And what I mean by that is, mistakes aren't important. It's what happens in between those mistakes. That's when you're making music, and that's what's important. So sometimes we get caught up on perfection and hating on mistakes. But you know what? You make a mistake, so what? It's what happens in between that's really important. So that's something to a mindset to think about. The final bullet point is, the audience is on our side. And this is where something like a competition or a recital is kind of a graduating recital can be a weird setting, because in a normal concert, the audience is on your side. They've paid money to come and have a good time, right? If I go hear a concert, I want to have a great time. I want to hear a great concert. I'm ready to enjoy what the performer is going to offer me. So that's something to remember, that in most cases, the audience is on your side. You're going to be the most critical person. The audience is there to enjoy it. So think about that. Then I have some practical advice. Be super prepared. There's a huge difference between being nervous because you're performing and being nervous because you don't know if you're going to be able to get through this piece. And if you're really prepared, if you know the piece inside and out, if you've practiced performing and getting ready for this, and you're really confident, then all you have to deal with are these nerves of performing. But if you're up there thinking, oh, here comes this bit, I've never been able to play that very well, and oh, I don't know this piece very well, or I just hope I get through this, it's all a little shaky. Then there's that fear that's involved with this other aspect, and that just builds. So if possible, especially when you start performing, if you can be super prepared, that's just going to take away a lot of this added stress. So that's something very important. Practice performing. And by that I mean, say you're playing a program. It might be one piece, it might be 3 pieces, it might be 10 pieces. Practice, say, walking out, bowing to the audience, if that's what's going to happen in your performance. Sitting down, starting the piece, playing through, no matter if you make mistakes, just keep going. This is a performance. Just keep on going. Finish that. Maybe get up and bow or whatever, or speak between pieces, whatever you're going to be doing. Play the next piece. Just keep on going through it. And practice. So practice that idea of performing, because when we practice on our own, there's often a tendency to stop at a mistake or to work on a particular thing or something. But just that experience of just going straight through the piece, and if problems occur, that's okay. Just keep going. Figure out a way to keep going. And so that's very important as well. And those other aspects, like if you're going to say something between pieces, practicing that, or practicing again, even just bowing, just so that things are as familiar as possible and seem as normal as possible when you actually do it. Next, mistakes happen. Letting go and getting on with the piece. So again, that's just the training yourself, practicing that ability to make a mistake and keep going. And especially important to not dwell on it, to not look back and say, oh, how could I do that? Or, oh, what happened there? It happened. That's fine. Just keep going. And that brings me to the next point right now. In other words, when you're playing, you sort of want to dwell just right in the moment. You're thinking, here's this note, and next note, and of course the shape of the piece obviously is really important, but that you don't want to think too far ahead. Oh, this next movement is really hard, or oh, I'm almost done. I think I'm going to get through this, or think back in the past. Oh, I messed up that. Oh, how could I do that? That you want to just be in this moment right here. So you're playing these notes, and you know what's happening next a little bit, but that you're just dwelling right in that moment. Visualization. Now, this isn't something that I tend to do a lot of, but some people find it very helpful, and I thought I would mention that there, in that you might find it helpful just to sit or whatever and visualize there you are walking on stage or whatever, playing your piece really well, and everyone loves it. They're clapping and leaving the stage, and just build that picture in your head. So I'm not really the right person to talk about that. You can certainly read. There are a lot of books on that, but that's certainly something to consider. Turn scared adrenaline into excited adrenaline. We get ready to perform, and there's all this energy coursing through our body. So one of the things to do is to tell yourself that this is excited energy, that you're happy to be, that there's all this energy, that you're about to perform, so that we have this adrenaline, but make it excited adrenaline, that I'm so happy that I'm going to get to play this piece, that I'm going to share this music with these people, that this adrenaline is good adrenaline. It's getting me ready. It's getting me up. It's going to help me perform at my best, rather than, oh, there's all these nerves and all this energy and I just can't deal with it. So yeah, so try to take that energy and say this is excited energy and not scared energy. And that leads me to the next bullet point. You want to be here. In that hopefully you do want to be here, that you would like to be performing, and maybe you're dealing with nerves and performing's not as fun as you would like right now, but this is what you want to do. So I know for me, especially when I started performing, that was helpful to just remind myself that, hey, sure, maybe I'm feeling a little nervous right now, but this is what I want to do. So I should be happy, I should be excited. This is what I want to do. Building a positive memory bank. And this ties into the idea of finding a lot of low stress and supportive performance opportunities, because the more positive performance experiences you have, the more you can draw on them and say, well, I was really nervous, but everything went okay last time, or the last 10 times, or remember all these times where I was really nervous, but it went okay. Maybe I made a mistake here. Mistake there. Nobody noticed, or they liked it anyway. I had a good time, and having this memory bank of positive experiences to draw on can be quite helpful when you're dealing with a stressful situation. You can say, well, yeah, I am feeling a little nervous about that, but I'm probably going to get through that. Look, I did well these other times. So, and again, that ties in with if you're doing these low stress performances, that gives you the best shot of having what you can call a positive performance experience. And then we hear everything when performing. Don't be too harsh. And this is an interesting phenomenon because even when I've recorded myself, so you'd think that would be super accurate, right? I can hear something and say, well, that wasn't quite even. That wasn't quite the way I wanted it. But I can't really make it out on the recording. When we're performing, time slows down, or it can slow down, and we can just hear everything that goes right and also everything that goes wrong, so that, and we're right there next to the harp. So when even the microphone was right there next to the harp, can't necessarily pick up everything that we're hearing. So imagine somebody sitting out there in the audience. A lot of the stuff that we might hear, they're not going to notice. So don't be too harsh on yourself. Obviously, you want to notice, oh, I wish I'd like to do that better next time, etc., whatever. But there's an old saying, playing in an orchestra, that when I'm playing really well in an orchestra, I know that everybody in the audience can hear every note that I'm playing. But when I've played poorly, that's okay. They couldn't hear a thing. It was covered up by the other instruments, right? So cultivate a little bit of that just don't be too harsh on yourself, and remember that you are going to hear all your mistakes, but somebody out there in the audience is not necessarily going to hear that. Phew. So just some closing thoughts, trying to sum up what I've talked about. Everyone gets nervous, but you can learn to enjoy it. So that's, I think, a very important thing, that you're not alone if you're nervous. Everyone gets nervous. It's natural. But there's a pretty good chance that you can just learn to enjoy it, that you can actually relish that being up on stage and performing. New is scary. Perform lots. And again, that's a big thing to remember, that the fact that it's new, if you're just starting performing, is a huge thing. So that there's no secret, it's just doing more performances. Being willing to be a fool. Don't be too harsh on yourself. And again, that just ties in with the idea of mindset. And I think that being willing to be a fool is a huge, huge part of being able to enjoy performing. That you have to surrender yourself, your ego, or the part of you that couldn't cope with making a mistake. You just have to say, well, no, I might make a mistake. That's the way it goes. And then just enjoy performing. And finally, the audience is on your side. If you enjoy it, so will they. And that's so important, right? You could be playing really, really well, but clearly nervous, and the audience might pick up on that, and they're not going to enjoy it as much as someone who is making some mistakes, but is just really, really enjoying it and not worried about those mistakes. In a concert a couple of years ago, I remember I had a wire string break, big noise, and right towards the end of a particular piece, and I had to stop. And that could have been a really tense or frustrating moment. But if you're embarrassed or frustrated or tense, the audience is going to pick up on that. And for me, I was just, this broke. I talked about the strings, these are wire strings, these are gut strings. Probably talked about the pedals as I was changing the string, and there's 47 strings on this harp, and maybe how often they break and stuff like that. Because I wasn't thrown by this. This happens, and then afterwards, people said, "Oh, I was so glad a string broke." That actually ended up being a really neat part of the concert because they got to learn a little bit more about the harp, and they got to share that. They're sort of sharing that moment with the performer, and that's all about how how you perceive things. That's something that you could perceive as being really bad. If you perceive it as not, it's no problem, no worries. And the audience picks up on that, then it can actually end up being a positive. So again, the audience is there to enjoy, and if you're enjoying performing, and they're going to enjoy listening to you, and it's just this great feedback loop. So so hopefully these thoughts, hopefully something there might have given you some food for thought. Let's show this little cheat sheet again. I don't know how well this will pick up in terms of resolution on YouTube, but anyway. And I think that's it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Cheers.